And so I'm just going to spend a few minutes up front talking about what that journey was like. And why did I end up at Siena, and why not somewhere else? And what was it that was special about Siena that kind of called me here, I think. And then secondly, I'm going to talk about through the lens of three really important ideas: faith, hope, and love. And I borrowed a title from one of our great sisters in Adrian Dominican history and Siena Heights history, Sister Nadine Foley, who wrote a book about the Dominican sisters called Seeds Scattered and Grown. It's a little play off that hymn, I think, Seeds Scattered and Sown, I'm just guessing. But I think that would really be the right framework to be able to think about. And my hope is, especially for the students, that we think about this not just as a tangible, tactical kind of thing, what did I get out of it, but hopefully a thought that you can take with you that might be helpful in your senior year or next semester or whenever, when you're having that moment about, hey, what do I want to study? Where do I want to go? What comes next? And so, hey, we're Siena Heights. I thought it'd be okay if everyone's all right. Maybe we'll just open with a quick prayer. We'll say, in the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Dear Lord, we thank you for this opportunity to spend time together. We thank you for Siena Heights. It's made so much of a difference for so many people in the past, present, and even more so in the future. We're really grateful for the gift of time you give us to spend tonight. We ask this in your name. Amen. Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Amen. Well, the first thing I thought I'd do is, but now faith, hope, love, abide these three, but the greatest of these is love. And that's kind of a framework for, when I think about the early days for me, I grew up not too far from here. Heck, I was born at Bixby Hospital. I could go by and, wave at the maternity ward tonight if I really felt nostalgic. But for me, being able to grow up in Onstead, and my Onstead family and friends are here, I don't think we changed the sign from 552 to 551 when I moved, but it's not a big town, but it's a caring town and a connected community. And, the funny thing is, we didn't even live in town. We lived out in the country. But, I was just really blessed. My mom's here. That's a shot of my mom. I didn't mean to make this family night, but when I heard she was coming, I thought I better change my slides and get that one in there. But, from the very earliest days, I was really fortunate that I had parents who loved me. And I had, a lot of great times. I mean, you could roam around and be outside and play baseball in town and great friendships and a lot of incredible fun. And I know, looking back on it, at the time I might not have realized how fortunate I was, but now I really appreciate that and what it meant for that formation in my life. I have two incredible sisters. My sister Heather and my sister Hillary. One lives in Chicago, one lives in Colorado. We talk all the time. We're always stuck in traffic, so I didn't hear much from Hillary when she moved from San Francisco because she was really stuck in traffic there. But, we keep in touch. And I think because we had what our parents provided us, which was a great chance to spend all that time together as kids, it really, really meant a lot. And, it was really a happy and important time. There's my dad, the Big Mur. He unfortunately passed away in 2002. But I know he's with us now. And so I miss him every day. But, along the way, we all grow up. I mean, even you college students will get older. It's something that just does happen. And I didn't have to go to science class to figure that out. Sister Sharon will let me know if I say anything wrong with regard to science or anything else. She's going to keep an eye on me. But I think for me, I started to, get into sports and things. And then in 7th grade, and I'm sorry, Uncle Gary, that's when I abandoned the University of Michigan and became a Spartan, because there was Magic Johnson and Greg Kelser and all these incredible basketball players that won the national title. And I was in for Sparty. I thought, that's my future. I had a chance to do some high school things, to spend some time on campus. And, I just knew that a Spartan path was where I was headed. So there's my senior year. I don't have a Spartan pin on, but I was thinking, I even realized that I went out on a limb because I put in the high school yearbook, it said, plans to study, goes to MSU, where he plans to study business administration and marketing next year. So I was all in. But in my senior year, a really interesting thing happened. I found out I could take classes for free at Siena Heights. So the first semester, I took a class in speech and communication. I want to say, I think Sister Irene Miller was the teacher who was a guide for me in terms of what classes to take. And she said, well, that will transfer to Michigan State. I said, well, that's good. And then the second semester, I thought, boy, what am I going to do second semester? Well, I want to study business. And so I went in to see Sister Irene. And oops, I went ahead too fast. I went in to see Sister Irene, and I said, I'd like to take this intro to business class. She goes, oh, that sounds great. And then she started looking at the papers a little bit, and I heard her literally under her breath saying, oh boy. And I was kind of leaning in a little bit. She goes, I don't think so. And I said, oh, is something wrong? She said, no, that's a Millikan course. I said, what is that? What is that? What's a Millikan course? Is that only for graduate students? She goes, pretty much. He's pretty tough. Some college seniors flunk his course. I don't want you taking that class as a high school senior. And then I just got curious, and I really, really wanted to take it. And so she was very kind, and she said, I think you're making a big mistake. and she was super kind and allowed me to register for the class. And this gentleman is fierce. This is Chuck Millikan, and he was my professor for this Introduction to Business course. But I loved it because it was so challenging and so hard, and you really had to be on your toes all the time. And then I got to know him a little bit as the class went on that semester. And somewhere along the line, I mentioned that I was going to Michigan State. That was a mistake, because then virtually every class, he'd find a way. He'd be up at that chalkboard, and he'd be at the chalkboard and he'd say, so for instance, marginal revenue equals marginal cost. Like for instance, why would you ever want to go to Michigan State when you could come to Siena Heights, which is a much better value? He'll underscore it again, and then he'd talk about consumer behavior. For the life of me, I can't figure out why anyone would go to Michigan State versus Siena Heights. So he was pounding away at this. And those of you who know Chuck know he can be very persistent. But that was all happening. And then somewhere along the line, those of you who've ever been to Clinton know that they have a really beautiful track. And so it came time in the track season for our league meet. And it's at the track's at the base of this beautiful hill surrounded almost by a valley, and there's this big bowl around it. And it's just such a wonderful day. I think I was supposed to get maybe third or fourth in the 800. And as it turned out, it was just one of those days where everything kind of fell into place, and I just felt really good. And I remember being in second place coming around the last lap and almost done, and something inside me just said, you can do this. And I picked up my tired legs and started to kick it in, and I just at the finish line was able to win the race. And it was really one of those wonderful days, and I could hear my mom yelling in the stands, and you know, I was sitting at the top of this hill, and I hadn't won the Olympics. I thought I was on top of Olympus, because as far as I could see, there were only good things ahead. And it was one of those moments where everything just felt so wonderful. And little did I know that another gentleman who I'm very close to and admire very much, and now we can say he is a Hall of Famer, Mr. Fred Smith. Let's hear it for Fred. He was also at that track meet, and little did I know that I would soon get a call from Fred that said in his deep booming voice, you know, why don't you come on down and take a view of campus? And I did. And so I got to visit here at Siena Heights. And I think Millikan had softened me up over the course of about 4 months to lean towards saying yes to Siena Heights. But when I met Fred and got to understand that I could run cross country and track, and by the way, my high school cross country coach is my uncle, Mickey Coons. He's here. So he was probably working on me a little bit too, because I would have been the towel boy at Michigan State. I would not have made the team. They would have had me bringing water bottles or something. But all those things, kind of like the universe conspired in so many ways to give me the opportunity to be here. And I'm eternally grateful that that happened, because I just know, and I'll just share a little bit about how I think that's changed my life. I'll say something else. You know, you think of songs sometimes, right? Well, the song I would say would be Freeze Frame. For those of you classic rock fans in the audience, you might remember it. But that moment on the top of that hill that I thought felt like Olympus, little did I know as I sat there that day, probably as happy as I'd felt that I can remember in my young life, little did I know that within 4 years, my parents who had been happily married would have a tough divorce. Little did I know that 2 of my grandparents, who I was incredibly close to, would both pass away, that the money that we had set aside for college would disappear, that the things that the job I was going to have in Detroit working alongside my dad in the automotive industry would evaporate, because things change, you know. But the thing that I learned the most was that Siena Heights could be the place where through faith, hope, and love, I could learn and have a foundation that was more important than any learning that I might receive. The learning's essential, don't get me wrong. But the other things you receive, the learning you don't get measured on, there's no test to know how you've grown in your soul necessarily, but you know. And that is what Siena provides. It's so unique. I came to Siena thinking I was hungry for learning and achievement and success. And I think what I'm going to be able to share at the end of our time together is I found out something equally and actually even more powerful. So I'd like to talk about faith because for me, faith is something that's a really powerful force. I know it's unique for each of us and really special. For me, in those tough times, because tough times are starting to happen in our lives, the person who helped me the most with my faith was my college roommate. And I know this is going to sound scandalous. She was awesome. That's my grandma. I lived at my grandma Eleanor's house when I went to college. Yeah, I just wanted to clarify. Student life, no co-ed logic. Anyway, but no, I got to live with my grandma. Right after I had decided to go to Siena. In fact, Fred, it was a coach. I got to say coach, sorry. It was the first week of cross-country practice. Sadly, my grandfather unexpectedly passed away. My grandma had been in a wheelchair since her 30s, most of her adult life, with multiple sclerosis. And I moved in and then commuted to school from there. But the times I got to spend with my grandmother, you know, the time was a little bit hard because there's always something going on and she needed a little help here and there. And we'd go to the grocery store every Saturday morning over at Manitou Beach or whatever it might be. But, you know, the times we got to spend to me are such a powerful force that I've remembered for so long. And at the time, those things that were turning or going wrong or being difficult, or maybe it was just a tough class, she taught me how to drink coffee. And my goodness, was that a powerful thing to have on your side during college days. And she'd always say, no, James, don't ruin it with cream and sugar. Come on. And she had the 2 ceramic mugs we'd always use. But, you know, I'd come to her with the troubles that I had at that time. I was 18, 19 years old, thinking that they were insurmountable, that the worst things that had ever happened to anybody, and the big, horrible things that, you know, that meant for me. And then she just had this way of listening intently, being incredibly reassuring. She kind of tapped me on the wrist, and she'd always say it this way, James, if that's the worst thing you have to worry about, life's pretty good. And so that's what I'd share with all of you as students especially. You're going to have pressures. You're going to have troubles. You're going to have moments where you feel really alone. Just remember, it gets better. Tomorrow's a better day than this afternoon was. It will be okay. And so I'm just really incredibly grateful to have had that encounter with my grandmother as my roommate during those years. It meant the world to me. Talk a little bit about hope. And, you know, hope for me around school was about being positive, about wanting good things to happen and wanting to work hard and see the future. Now, this is my car. It was a Torino, 72 Torino. It had one small problem. I paid $50 for it, so I didn't have a car payment. That was good. I would have paid $60 if I could have got that gas gauge to work. Yeah, because one of the problems with the car was on my way to school, I'd often run out of gas. I was an optimist. I was thinking, I'll get there. You know, it's the road downhill all the way to your door or something. Now, unfortunately, I didn't have a lot of extra money for gas money. So what I would do is I had the lawnmower gas in the trunk. And then the only unfortunate thing was that couldn't reach I couldn't get it into the tank. So I had Mountain Dew bottles clinking around in the back. I would pour gasoline into the Mountain Dew bottle and then stand behind it and fill it up. And then that will get me to Wesco, you know, something. So, but it is also, though, giving me a longer life because I'm certain that is the reason I never started smoking. Because with all that gasoline going around, it could have been bad. So yeah, don't look too close. There might be a Michelob Light bottle. Don't tell my mom. But it's wrapped in the Wall Street Journal. So, and I mean, the car looks pretty good there. It was a little rusted. But that's all right. But you know, the thing I realized is that there were other things beyond the wolf pack. Chuck Milliken became my academic advisor. I gave the sneak preview. He said, you need to get down to Washington, D.C. and do an internship. And I thought, well, that's a good idea. Why not? So I found a way to do that. So that summer in Washington, it was amazing. I learned so much. I understood that I had a real interest in public policy and politics and how things worked. And I was meeting people from all over the country and all these incredible things were happening. But I do have to tell a little story on myself because I promised Kate Hamilton, who's been so gracious in putting all this together for tonight, that I would be vulnerable. Well, I had a briefcase that had been my dad's briefcase that I used when I was down in Washington because I didn't have the coin to go out and buy a new briefcase or something. That seemed kind of frivolous. My job was pretty important. I answered the mail that wasn't in the computer. So if it wasn't a standard response, I had to send that out. So one day I was down in the cafeteria, congressional cafeteria, and I went back up to, I'm sure, type a really important letter. and I couldn't find my briefcase anywhere. And it struck me, oh boy, I bet I left it down in the cafeteria. So I wandered down back to the cafeteria. I get down there to find it, and it's gone. And then I heard someone from the Capitol Hill Police say, we couldn't take any chances. There wasn't anyone around it for 15 minutes. Well, that made me feel a little bit panicked. So I went around the corner to the Capitol Hill Police Station, and there's this guy. He looked like Bull from Night Court, for those who remember the show. And I said, sir, I think I misplaced my briefcase. He looked at me, and his eyes kind of narrow. He slapped his knee and said, ha ha, the bomb squad's got it now. Take a seat. So I'm sitting down, and I'm pretty nervous. I'm thinking, well, there goes that internship up in flames. Not literally, hopefully. But in any event, I'm waiting. And did I mention something about the briefcase? That in high school, me and my friends had a spy club, and that we kept our spy documents in that, and that in the haste to get down to Washington, D.C., I hadn't taken them out of there, but I had like fake letters from Ronald Reagan, who was president then, thanking Richardson, Exley, and Fry for their hard work in the hallways of Onstead High School. I mean, it's all, friends, it wasn't good. I mean, there were maps. We were surveilling Tim Kimball. Please don't tell him. I hope he's not listening in. And so that made me worry a little bit more. And then this woman came in, and she said, young man, is this your briefcase? And I said, yes, it is. And she said, you better ask your mommy to buy you a new one. We had to blow this up with plastic explosives. She put it down. There's a giant gaping hole in it. And it's like, thankfully, they didn't read any of the paperwork. So I was safe. I didn't get put in the clink or anything like that. But the next day, I went through security, and the security guards were making fun of me. They said, oh, you're the one the bomb squad got yesterday. It was a big hole. Thankfully, for those of you in Washington, D.C., don't ever forget to thank your gift store at the Capitol Hill Gift Store Club, because they have really cool congressional stickers that will get you there. And we can look through the spy files later. So we'll leave it there. Now, the reason I mentioned that story is because I said I would be vulnerable. The other reason I mention it is, ironically, that story was one that later in life, I had the opportunity to share when I was, after graduation, looking for a job. I had the opportunity to interview with an advertising agency named J. Walter Thompson. Now, the line is one of those job fairs. There are literally, and for those of you who get into that zone, those are crazy, but it's good experience. But I was standing in line, and this young woman in front of me said, I interned at Ogilvy in Chicago last summer, and her suit was like $1,200, and that was 1985, or 87. So anyway, I didn't think it was good to stand beside her in line, so I stood by someone else who thought they were an accounting firm. But anyway, by the time I got up to do the interview, I was able to talk to the personnel director who was doing the interviews, and she asked a question. She said, have you ever had an unexpected situation that caught you off guard, and how did you respond? And for whatever reason, this story popped into my head, and I shared it. And she was kind of tough before that. When I finished the story, she was laughing, she was crying. She said, that's a good one. That's a good one. Well, thankfully, you know, one of your predecessors, Gail Carr, then received a call from this woman, Jackie Burko, who invited me to come up to Detroit to be interviewed for one of two management training positions. So they had talked to 600 people from around the country, and they narrowed it down to 30, and I was one of the 30. I thought, well, gosh, that's not much of a shot, but it's worth trying. So I got up there, and they had each of us, we're going to interview with 7 different vice presidents who worked at this ad agency. Hey, folks, we're going to pause for a second. Let's give it up for B. Rich. That's not B. Rich. You look a lot like my son, though. Let's give it up for B. Rich. He's got a body double. That's awesome, Brendan. I drove from Detroit to be here. Good to see you guys. But here's the cool thing. So I talked to these 5 to 7 different vice presidents, and I've been rehearsing that all night. I'm sorry. I apologize, sir. But each of those, 5 of those 7 vice presidents said, they literally, like, they said, oh, wait a minute. Are you the guy that had that briefcase that got like blown up? And it was funny because that's not something you want to brag about, so I was a little hesitant. But you know what? It's so interesting because actually I think it kind of helped in an unexpected way. And so, and as it turned out, they offered me one of the 2 positions, and that's where I got the chance to start my career from Siena Heights. The other guy was from Yale or somewhere, you know, and that's okay. That's a good school, but it's now Siena Heights. But the nice thing is, and I guess the reason I share it for the students here is that, hey, sometimes things don't go exactly as planned, but your generation knows this better than any other. Being authentic and being true is so much better than trying to paper it over or just not be yourself. And that's what I really took away from it. I was really fortunate at J. Walter to have the chance to work on lots of incredible brands with lots of incredible people. As teams, we won 4 different Effies, which is a really cool award and fun. And primarily because it means that the work you've done has helped and made a difference. So for me, that hope at that time in my life was really about a hope to achieve more and to be my best in terms of professionally. I mean, we all know competent, purposeful, ethical, how important that is. And I think for me at this point in life, it was really about that and trying to be competent to the best of my abilities. I'm going to talk a bit about love because love is about what you get to do when you have shared experiences. How many of the students here are on a team of some kind or another? Raise your hand. How many people who aren't on a team are in the performing arts or some other aspect of the school? There you go, there you go. Good job. So anyway, it's awesome because what you get here is that shared experience. And for me, that love came from the chance to build friendships that I knew would last a lifetime and that were really, really special. So now I'm going to show a picture. Some of you are going to recognize this young man. Well, that's not it. That's slide ahead. But that all happened at Siena Heights. That fella right there, Tim Bauer. And you know, yeah. And so since Tim couldn't be here, he's at Nationals, I thought I'd share one Tim Bauer story because I think that's important. So Tim was an incredible coach. Coach Smith was our cross-country coach, and then he took on new duties as athletic director. And so Tim became our cross-country coach and our track coach. And Tim was a motivator. Tim's just one of those people who connects. And, you know, he's been part of the program himself. He'll tell you, Colonel Crawford, Cyrus. But he's a one-of-a-kind person. And I put this here as a reminder because we had a meet that wasn't the world's best meet. We didn't do very good at all. And that was a year when we were supposed to make it to Nationals. We got back from Tri-State, I think, and it just had been a bad weekend. And so we were all sitting in the locker room waiting to find out what we were going to run on a Monday. And Coach came in, and Tim was not happy. He kind of stalked in, and he was scowling. You know, he had kind of a Chumley mustache going then. He said, "Boys, I'm not very happy." Everyone got really quiet. You know, he said, "In fact, I'm disappointed. You know what? I've been saying all year, we're going to make it to Nationals. You know what? We're not going to make it to Nationals. You know why? Because you guys don't have heart." And this is where he started to lose a little bit. This really happened. I have other people who will verify. So, and we're about to cry. I mean, he's really letting us have it. Then a friend, Mark Skelsey, comes in like he didn't know what was going on. He said, "Skelsey, sit down." And then Tim looked back and he said, "You know what? You guys, you know why you're not going to make it? You're gutless. You don't have any pride. You got no heart. When I used to be in the program with Rich Veslick, we had heart. We had pride. You guys don't even care. You know what? I'd love to run still. I still think I could make it to the 1988 Olympics." We're thinking, Tim, Rich, too far, buddy. Started to lose a little bit there. But then he turned to the locker and he said, "You know what, guys? This locker would love to run, but it can't. It just has to sit here all day." And that's where he started to lose just a little bit. And then someone smirked or something. He goes, "Go run 8 miles." And we did. Here's the thing. That turned our season around. Oh, wait, I forgot he threw a stopwatch down. Broke the stopwatch. It wasn't a proud moment for the stopwatch, but we found out later it was already broken. But the fact that he took the time to connect with us in that moment was powerful because it turned our season around. I'll never forget, so many of us, that's the fastest 8-mile training run I think we've ever done. And I think it's because he let us know, look, this doesn't get handed to you. If you want to make it to Nationals, it doesn't happen automatically or by accident. You have to work for it. He had a unique way of bringing the locker into it, which we've teased him about over the years. I know he wouldn't mind me sharing that story because we laugh about it all the time. But it was a magic moment. But I think about that all the time. And I think about the experiences you get to have when you're part of a community, whether it's sports, whether it's performing arts, whether it's just being in class together. That's so powerful. And, you know, after college, 2 of my best friends in the world, one was the best man and when Kate and I got married, Steve Willis and Mark Skelsey and I lived in this house in Royal Oak with another friend who would go on to be Father Steve later in life, Father Steve Wharton. But we had, you know, such a great time together, and so much of that foundation came from being here at Siena Heights. And I wouldn't have had those opportunities or those memories if it wouldn't have been for Siena. And you know what? we're still incredibly close. So this is a group of us that got together. It was a sad occasion. My friend Steve Willis's mom had passed away. But to gather together, to be there in good times and bad, that's what it's all about. That's where meaning comes from, and substance that will carry you through the greatest moments and the worst of days. And so for me, that's what love is, and how Sienna helps us get there. Said I would share those seeds that were planted so long ago and how they've really started to influence life today. And the first I'd like to talk about is faith. For me, faith wasn't something I, turned away from. It was something I kind of hid from a little bit. I'd grown up Baptist in a small town and had really strong and good foundations. But later in life, I just it wasn't that important to me. I knew I never rejected God or did anything like that. But at the same time, I wasn't really plugged into it. Well, as life went on, I just realized somewhere along the line, so many of my friends that I met at Sienna, so many of my friends that I had through life, turns out were Catholic. And I was living in Corktown in Detroit at the time, working at the advertising agency. And I wandered into Holy Trinity, which is one of the oldest churches in downtown Detroit. And I met this man, Father Russ Kohler. And through that encounter, joined an RCIA class and went on to become Catholic. And to me, I think that faith is deeply personal. But boy, if you have that calling, if you have that inclination, listen to it. It's so important, so powerful, because it's what gives us our foundations, and it's what we need, I think, to survive and thrive. But I'm so thankful, because without that time at Sienna, without Sister Pat Hogan, and those of you who didn't have the chance to know Sister Pat, she was wonderful. She taught logic, and you'd appreciate this. She would start out like this, and she'd say, what is the power of a liberal arts education? What is the root? Everyone would be kind of quiet, because what is she, are we supposed to answer? What is the root? Then someone would say, liberate. And she, liberate what? And then everyone would really be quiet. Your minds from what? Ignorance. And she really was great, and just so passionate. But all these different encounters with teachers here at Sienna who had faith as their foundation and their bedrock, I think are what really prepared me to embrace my faith more fully. I'm going to talk about a story of hope. And this is also personal in terms of, something that really made the biggest difference in my life was that I had the chance to meet this young lady. And so we had worked together a little bit from a distance. And so one day she called up and she said, hey, do you like football? My brother John and I are going to the Ohio State Notre Dame football game this Saturday. Her name's Kate. And I said, oh, that sounds awesome. Good for you. Well, the next day she called up and said, you're not going to believe it. My brother John can't go to the game, and I've got this extra ticket. Would you like to go? And so I said, well, that sounds like fun. So we went to the football game, and we went to her parents' house after the game. First person I saw was her brother John, who was supposed to be out of town. So that gave me a hint that maybe it'd be okay to ask her out. And so I did. And then we got married. Not that quickly, but, so Kate and I have been married for 22 years now. And it's just been amazing. So we have 5 children. And that's Brendan, also known as B-Rich, SoundCloud rapper, check it out. Finn, Chloe, Mary Grace, and Maggie. And the next story I'm going to tell, and we love all of our children unconditionally. We love them with all our heart, soul, and mind. But I'm going to tell a story about just one of our children because I think it's relevant to hope. This is our daughter, Mary Grace. Now, if I were to say she's the middle child, Brendan will back me up on this, she would say I'm the third. She doesn't like that middle child designation. But from a very early age, as you can kind of see in this picture, she has a curiosity about her. She's an explorer. She wants to see the world. And she does. And so she's also had a great knack for over the years for taking that spirit of curiosity and doing things sometimes a little mischievous and more than they should be. So the thing that comes to mind, for instance, is when I caught her in on the computer, she's like, I don't know, 7 or 8 years old. I thought she was playing Pop Tropica. It turns out she wasn't. I said, Mary Grace, what did you just do? And she goes, I'm just printing it. I said, what are you printing? And she said, my registration to try out for America's Got Talent in Indianapolis. So what? You're not old enough to do that. She goes, I just did. And so she signed up. And then Kate and I said, well, we're not taking you to Indianapolis to try out for America's Got Talent. You crazy? Well, there we are. we drove over the night before. We thought, let's get there early. I wanted to get home the same day. Yeah, right. We got in line. It was an 8-hour line. I'm not joking. We were in line forever, just waiting, I was like, about to hire strangers to watch the kids so I could go get water. I was worried about survival. But we managed it through. She got her number. She got all of her other things. That's her sister Maggie, who was at moments perplexed by the whole thing. But and also Mary Grace's biggest cheerleader. But we get into this room, and it's literally like something you see on a reality TV show. Well, it's a reality TV show. Thank you. But there's a big table and a person with a Mac, hello. And they bring 50 people into the room at once. This is after 8 hours of waiting. And so there's 50 people. There's a person with a banjo. There's a person juggling. There's a person with a pet monkey around there. There's all kinds of things going on. And the person, the judge says, okay, we're going to go through our next 50 contestants. I'm just going to call your names off randomly. And first up, Mary Grace Richardson. Is there a Mary Grace Richardson? Little Mary Grace is here. But she got up and sang a song from Mulan, and that was the end of our America's Got Talent experience. So she has this knack for doing things without us knowing about it. So we hang out with my mom in the summers a lot. This is Mary Grace, who went ahead and did, she said, can I do a newspaper? Yeah. Go do a newspaper. She started doing a newspaper. She hired Maggie to be in charge of sales, and then they started charging $2 going door to door, selling them to the neighbors. They came back with $8 and 1 cabbage that somebody gave them. So she's got this knack for like always pushing for what's next. And so, it wasn't surprising at all. At some point in her life, Mary Grace was 11 years old. She decided she was going to be on the United States Supreme Court. I said, Mary Grace, that's not an elected position. She goes, Dad, I know. I'm going to get Hannah Fernandez elected president. She's promised to appoint me to the Supreme Court when that happens. So she also got into Shakespeare at the same time because she liked the insults. So Mary Grace said, hey, there's this thing up in Stratford. You and Mom love Stratford. Guess what, Dad? It's free. It doesn't cost a penny. And what we're going to do is we can go up, and the Canadian Supreme Court justices are going to put the Macbeths on trial. It's Shakespeare, it's Supreme Court. What do you say? Want to go for a trip, Dad? And so, of course, we signed up for it. And so we made the trip. The week before we went, we know she wasn't feeling very good. And she had gotten a lot taller and lost some weight. And, she wasn't feeling like herself. And on Wednesday, we were going to take off Thursday morning. On Wednesday, she said, Mom, I can't go to school today. And, you don't have a temperature. You just need, Mary Grace, you got to go to school. You're going to miss Thursday and Friday. You're going to stay ahead of your work. And so that was the plan. And so we asked her to go to school, and she did. And then we made our way up to Stratford. And what we didn't know is that she was very, very sick. She was very sick. That she was having a really tough time. And she was putting on a brave face because she didn't want to miss the Supreme Court thing with the Macbeths. And so we headed back home, and I called Kate and said, I'm really worried about her. And so Kate suggested, it's a long drive, but rather than come straight home, go to the urgent care. Maybe she's got mono or something, just so we can get her healthy before the school week starts and all. So we went into the urgent care, and we're nervous and joking around, but I could tell she just wasn't herself. And we were in there and described some of her symptoms and what had been going on. And then the doctor came in, and I'll never forget it because he said, he just looked at her and he didn't sugarcoat it or anything. He just said, honey, you've got diabetes. Her blood sugar levels were over 700. We were told that she was probably about 12 hours away from going into a coma, and we could have lost her. And so they rushed us into the ER to get IVs going, and then they got us into an ambulance, and we headed down to Nationwide Children's Hospital in Columbus. It was the hardest trip ever. We got down to the hospital, and it was like something you would see on TV. Doctors were running everywhere. They got her into the ER. They were checking all these numbers and checking her vitals and doing all the things. My family's first responders, they know how this goes. And it's the worst feeling you can ever have as a parent. And while they were doing all that, in the midst of all that, there was a doctor. I don't know her name. She came in, and she got down beside Mary Grace, and she took a knee, and she looked right at Mary Grace in the eye, and she said, I'm going to tell you something really important. She said, there's a lot going on right now, and over the next 3 days, people are going to be telling you 15 different things. There's only one thing I want you to remember out of all of this. You can do anything you thought you could do before you knew you had diabetes. You just have to be smart about it. And that was like the greatest gift that could have ever been given. So, we powered through. She slowly got better. And along the way, we knew it was going to be okay. It's 2019, you know. Talk to people who were diagnosed with diabetes in the 60s and what their life was like. But instantly, we knew the second she was diagnosed that means her life expectancy is 17 years shorter. That every time she puts food into her mouth, she has to think about to give herself insulin or not, or how much to give. That if she gives herself too much insulin, she can go low overnight and not wake up. So all those things are weighing down on us. But through it all, I think that hope comes through. And I can't tell you how vital it was for us to have that faith as a family, to confront it head on and to work through it together. So Mary Grace got healthy quick. She recovered quick. Thank goodness. Thank goodness for great doctors. Thank goodness for all the sciences and the researchers and the people who are trying to make our lives better every day. It won't surprise you that 6 months later, she came to me and said, Dad, I got a plan. There's this thing down in Columbus. I said, what? It's called Slider Search. And actually, White Castle's involved, so she knew about it because we helped sponsor it. But it's this thing where they look for luge athletes, and they go out on a hill in the middle of summer and go down like crazy wheel luge things. It's like, well, that's cool. Yeah, that'd be fun. So I took Mary Grace and Maggie, and you know, Mary Grace did pretty good. 3 months later, we got an email, and she got invited to Lake Placid to try out again. And then a month after that, we got another email to come back for a final tryout. And then she actually made United States Olympic Development D team, and then did really well. She was able to actually win a bronze medal in the Empire State Games, and then she actually has been doing TV interviews in Columbus, and she got moved up to the C team. So Mary Grace and Kate leave to go to Latvia to train for 2 weeks in a week from Monday. And so it's really just this tragedy that happened in her life. She didn't let it get her down. And so she wrote an essay about it, and the thing she said was remembering those words that the doctor shared with her. You can do anything you want as long as you're smart about it. Now, just in case Maggie's watching this later, she just made the development team. So we're not going to give her short shrift. So it's pretty awesome and fun, and it's been a real godsend in our lives. I'll close out with love. Love is something that I know we all yearn for. I mentioned that I thought I was hungry for learning. I thought I was hungry for recognition and success. I learned something from my time at Siena Heights, and it might have taken me maybe 25, 30, maybe even 35 years to write this moment, as time goes on, to understand that's what we hunger for. It's that hunger to be closer to God. As a Catholic, my hunger I know now is for Eucharist, to be united to Christ in that living sacrifice. But you know, as a family, we've grown older, everyone's on their path and on their way. But you know, the thing that I like to look to is to know that when we look to the future, we can do anything we want with God's help. And that as Siena Heights saints, we have something really special and unique that's unlike anything else you're going to encounter. You've already made the right choice. You're here. You're on a great path. You've got so many friends and wonderful guides. It's going to lead you to incredible places that any mountain is no problem at all. And I'm reminded in closing of a quote from St. Catherine of Siena. If you are who you were meant to be, you will set the world ablaze. Thank you.
Jamie, can't wait to give you a hug. Michael Orlando.
I know, Michael. Good to see you.
I love faith, hope, and love. I think it is essential to the student experience at Siena. My dissertation has actually been on meaning and purpose in college students' lives. And I'm just wondering, maybe with your kids or young college graduates that are around you, how are you seeing the encouragement to seek out faith as a meaningful and essential part of their lives?
I think it's I think this is an awesome generation because they're teaching the older generation what it means to be authentic. That from an early age, they've been able to share a lot, right? I mean, social media, we shouldn't be cursing it as the older generation. We should be embracing it because it's giving every young person the chance to express themselves in ways they wouldn't have been able to before. But I think the most important thing is to be authentic because you know, none of us like hypocrisy, but young people have a special sense of knowing what isn't true. And I think that when we live our faith, we need to be honest about hey, I didn't get that right. We need to be able to say, I'm sorry, I kind of messed up earlier today. I wish I wouldn't have had that tone in my voice or whatever, and apologize in the moment. There's things we can control and things we can't. I just think trying to live our faith is just that, and the best thing we can do is live by example.
Other questions?
Yeah, sure.
What was the hardest part about like hearing that your child had diabetes, and like the hardest step in like you guys growing and figuring out like she could like do other things with it?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And the hardest part was feeling guilty. You know, she was when your body's eating itself up from the inside out. So she was thirsty all the time, and she was hungry, but she couldn't eat because she would really hurt. And when we were up in Canada, I just felt so horrible afterwards. I know I couldn't have known. I couldn't find a water, so I gave her a Sprite. You know, I was doing the wrong things, and I didn't know because I didn't know what was wrong. So that's been hard, you know, and we've talked about it a lot. And, you know, Kate, she wanted some of Kate's water, and she drank out of Kate's Yeti. And Kate got really upset, going, "You're sick, you got the flu or something. Don't drink out of my drink." You know, so those things haunt you. We understand logically, right, that, you know, of course we didn't know. The hardest part was, I mean, you know, Brendan, I mean, it's the whole family's affected. You know, everybody's affected. You know, I'm not trying to do family therapy here publicly, but sorry, be rich. But no, it is hard because you want to be there. And the hardest part is for those families who've been affected, you know, it's the fear factor and being able to let go. So at this point, we don't have her traveling on her own to lose things. Like Kate goes with her, but we try to hang back. The biggest thing we have to learn is not to badger her. You know, like, hey, your number's high, or, you know, look at this. You know, it's not her fault. I mean, there's things she can do better. There's things we can do better. And we just tried to approach it as a team, and that's been helpful. And we've gone and had some really great, we found a great therapist, you know, who's been really helpful and given us some good tools to kind of talk about it. And so we can listen, and that's been good for Mary Gracie too. Thank you for asking that. And I know this is pretty heavy duty, like personal. Gosh, I didn't mean to make it a family life slideshow. I can also answer any questions about, you know, work or White Castle. It's a little lighter, you know. I like the chicken rings. Yeah.
In regard to your internship in DC, what do you think the most important thing you took away from that was going forward in your professional career?
That's a great question. The question was, with regard to my internship in DC, what was the most important thing I took away from it? That if you work hard, it doesn't matter where you're from. I'll be honest, I love Siena Heights then, I love Siena Heights now. I was intimidated because I was working with these kids that was their third summer there. They were from all these Ivy League schools. It doesn't matter. That was my big takeaway, that if you work hard and you're engaged, you're gonna get everything you need here for a heck of a lot less money and a lot richer and better and authentic experience without all the hullabaloo. And for me, that was a real lesson that I don't think I had realized until then. It gave me a lot more confidence when I started at the ad agency, because I realized I can keep up. I've got the tools I need, and I just need to have confidence and know who I am. Thank you. That's a good question. Yeah.
What is your best advice to a marketing major, and what were some of the jobs that you considered before you were offered this one? Like,
Oh, that's a great question.
like some of the jobs out there that
Yeah.
you would like us to know about.
Okay. Well, I'll start with, what was the first part about the marketing major? I'm sorry.
What's your best advice to like marketing?
Best advice. I would say, know that's something you love, because if you're intrigued by problem solving, you really want to figure out how to communicate something in a way that's distinctive, then it's probably a good fit. I shared with some classes earlier today, know yourself, be a scientist about yourself and find out what you really like. Don't let it be like, oh, that sounds cool. No, that's not going to get you very far. I mean, it will for a while, right? You can probably land the job, but you're not going to be happy doing it. So know that if it's something you really like, do that real personal self-assessment, and then work hard at it, because it's competitive in that arena. But if you love it and you've got a passion for it, there's no limit to where you can take it, because there's lots of ways to express it. And you can align those skills that you develop with a cause you feel great about, a company you feel great about being part of. You can match it to an organization so the cultural fit is there. Other jobs I considered, I almost took a job with General Mills selling cereal. And yeah, and it was kind of cool because it was like a lot more money than what the ad agency was paying. It was double what the ad agency was going to pay me the first year. It had a company car. It was in Portland, Oregon. and all these other things. And the more I thought about it, I thought, I'd rather not worry about the money and do something I think I'm going to love and enjoy more. I'm glad I made that decision. Yeah, they offered me a job. So they wanted me to come out to Portland. And yeah, question is how to get the offers. Well, for one thing, the career office is great. I mean, use them. The other thing is work really hard on your resume and telling your story. And these days, there's more ways than ever to do that. And then be thoughtful. Don't just send it out to places you really want to work. Don't send it out to 500 places, but have 10 that you really feel great about. Do internships, you know. Find out if you really like it or not. That's the best trial balloon ever, you know. And then that gives you a hunch too. And you'll learn. It's just going to inform itself as you go. But definitely, it takes hard work, but it's worth it because then you're on the path, right? Don't sit back. Lean into it. And don't be afraid to ask for help. I think looking back on it, I was probably I wanted to do it all myself. Don't be afraid to ask for help, you know? So that's something we all want to do, right? But it's better just to run. Yeah. Any other questions?
I have one for you. Once you get into your career, I work with a lot of students who obviously would love to have a vice president title someday, but once you get in, what's your advice as far as making your presence known or just being an active participant to be like just surround yourself in that environment so that people recognize the value and the worth that you're able to give?
That's a great question. I think the biggest thing is we've each got unique things that we're drawn to. Just like in sports or anything else, go the extra mile. I mean, find a way to understand what's important to the group you're part of, whether it's a charity, whether it's a business or whatever. And find a way, you'll have more fun if you like the work too. But I think finding the things that can stand out. And don't be a game player. I mean, those cats never make it. I mean, ultimately, it always, I've seen it, I've been working now for 32 years. The people who are playing games and like getting all political, they might get ahead for a little bit. Ultimately, it always catches up to them. I really believe it. And I don't know if my worldview would come crashing down if that proved untrue, but I've seen those folks who don't have that authenticity and they're just like, they're telling the boss what the boss wants to hear, but they're not kind to their coworkers. I believe they get found out in the end, you know. Another big thing I learned at Siena, I wish I would have referenced it in the talk, but I can reference it now. The big thing Siena taught me around love is we're all equal in dignity. Doesn't matter what your job is or where you come from or where you're going. We're all equal in dignity. Once you recognize that, you can see the presence of God in everybody. And you can treat everybody with dignity. It doesn't mean that you have to be best friends and, you know, go on a road trip together, but it does mean that you treat people with courtesy and respect because that's what you do when you treat people with dignity. So I think that part of it stands out. Know why your company or your organization exists. So many people get caught in the shuffle of doing so many different things. Why are you here? What's the vision and the mission? Are people really committed to that? Because if it's something you believe in, you can go deep on it. Then you're going to help guide you. You're going to move the organization forward. So that would be my thoughts. Yeah. Any other questions?
Do you think you would be a different person today if you went to MSU?
If I went to MSU, I'd be wearing green. Fred would be making fun of me for the football game on Saturday. I think I would be a different person. I hope I would still have found a good path. I think that we're presented with lots of choices. We're given two gifts, the gift of time and the gift of free will. And then it's kind of up to us what to do with those two things. I'm sure it would have been a good experience. I'm just really grateful that I had this experience, you know. So, and look, we all have abruptions. I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, you know, sometimes families don't stay together. That doesn't lessen the love that you have for your parents or that your parents have for you. Some things just aren't meant to be. So I'm not trying to make that moment in my life feel like, at the time, it was really traumatic. I've seen my mom. She was one of my heroes. You saw it on the first slide. She is my hero today. She goes out and does Ironman triathlons. She does all these things. She's in the Michigan Sports Hall of Fame for coaching 5 teams that won the state championship. That's awesome. She's my hero because she loves me no matter what. If I have a bad day, that's the person I can call. So I'm over here because I can't make eye contact right now. So it feels very safe and the split screen. But I think that's what you kind of take away is you are who you are, but it's up to you to get there. And it's hard work. It's easy to unplug. And I'm only 54. You know, I'm still working on it a lot. I mean, you know, but just keep working at it. It's worth it. It's been really awesome to hang out. Thank you for coming out on a crazy night.
Thank you so much. We do have a reception out in the lobby, and Jamie will be around. So if you're not a public question asker, he is happy to answer questions, speak one-on-one. So please feel free to help yourself to the snacks in the lobby, and definitely students, it's your opportunity, and as well as you adults as well, to get to know Jamie. And we are so proud of you, and thank you so much for being a part of this Legacy first lecture speaker series. And thank you for coming back to your university.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. One quick disclaimer, I do not have any White Castles with me, but I do have as many coupons as I can give out till they're gone.
There you go.
So, I know, someday hopefully.
That's what we're hoping he brings. I will take.
Good, how are you? Good.
I'll take that so you can go out in the lobby and hang out with Michael and everybody else.
No finger cakes.
And open
Yeah.
your case. Yeah, he's got to see the spy file.
You're on.
Either.
Do you have to turn off the film?